Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Supercars Exchange podcast. As always, I am joined by Shane. How you going, Shane?
Mate, I'm awesome. How are you?
I'm going pretty good because I'm excited for today. Today we are going through the Supercars games, whether they be terrible or great. We're going to go through all of the Supercars games that we can find out about. We're going to rate them. But first off, we do have a few news bits to go through. Would you like to take us through those, Shane?
Yeah, well, there was a couple of bits that have popped up in the last few days. One, Thomas Randall, how he's going to be a wild card for the Bend coming up in a couple of weeks' time. He's had his livery unveiled in the last couple of days, and I must say it's probably going to be one of the best-looking cars out in the grid with the black and the orange wording on the car. I think it'll be a pretty good-looking car. They even went so far as to have Tickford had a little promo video up on their Facebook page, which I thought was quite unique, considering it's only this one-off drive. Apart from what we expect to see him in the Enduros, it's not announced yet. But I'd say unless he decides he wants to drive the wrong way around the track at the Bend, I think the Enduro drives are his to lose. So I think. And I think the way they've been talking him up the last couple of rounds, I wouldn't surprise to see him in one of their cars next year if Mostert were to leave.
When you said it's if he drives the wrong way around the Bend, that's easy enough to do considering how many different circuits there are that you could do around that circuit.
Yeah, that's right. If you accidentally take a left instead of going right, you'll end up adding 3Ks to your lap, which it would be interesting to see a supercar attempt the long lap there, because I think it's something like, it's many kilometres long, the full circuit. It's like 8 or 9 kilometres or something like that, the full circuit. So you'd be flat out ever remembering it. I'm glad that doesn't end up on a video game as we're talking about today. It's hard enough doing the Nordschleifer and getting that down pat on most video games that features on. So. Yeah, but I think I'm looking forward to seeing how he goes there. A lot of people have been talking him up on the lead up to this race, and I think it'd be really exciting to see.
Yeah, and we also had the controversial sign had been auctioned off from DJR Team Penske, the one that McLaughlin obviously took it to the podium in the last round, auctioned off for $30,000.
Well, yeah, it's the one that Authentic Collectibles was selling, the replica one. So it was,
okay.
I think $20 a pop. I've got mine in the mail. Should hopefully be here in the next 2 or 3 days. I got the email to say that that was on its way, and I was very excited. So that'll be taking pride and place somewhere around the house, wherever my partner lets me put it up, which probably won't be anywhere. I'll be able to take it out of the post pack for a day and show it off, and that'll be it. It'll go back in there for a while. But something that they got the fine over. The team was not expecting it to be $10,000. I think any podcast that I've listened to that they've talked about this subject, everyone said the same thing of like, how about a $10,000 fine for taking the poster up onto the podium? I think raising $30,000 for camp quality, like that's goes to show how many. I think it'd be fair to say it'd be mostly Ford fans that have gone out to buy this poster, and for as $20 for the sake of having something that marks a little bit of history. Mustang's first championship, first time back in the championship. I think it's a good thing, and it goes to a worthy cause.
That's true. Let's just jump straight into it. You're doing the older games for us, since you were around to actually experience those ones.
Yeah, I'm old enough to have played these games, so yes. Well, the first one I've got is it's one that was, as far as I know, this is the first game that a V8 Supercar featured on, and it was called Touring Car Championship, and it was released back in 1997. And wow, it was. I remember buying this game. I seen the box. On the front of it, it had Lounsey's Commodore and Brocky's Commodore. That would have been the VS back then, and I was like, oh wow, it's V8 Supercars, it's Bathurst. How can you go wrong? Quite easily, just got to play it. That's sort of how bad it ended up being. It was. I think like when I say I paid, my dad paid $50 to buy it for me, and as soon as we loaded it up, it didn't take too long to realise that, hang on, I think we might have been ripped off here, because it was not great. I guess at the time it was supposed to be cutting edge, because what they actually did was they superimposed the cars onto a full motion video of Bathurst, kind of as if all they've done is put a video camera strapped it to the top of a four-wheel drive, gone for a lap of the circuit, and then so the game is the car's just sitting on basically on this video. And so as you're speeding up, the frame rate of the video picks up, and as you slow down, the frame rate drops with it.
Like a bad Google Earth.
Yeah, that's it. Like a really bad Google Earth. And it's like you'll accelerate from 0 to the top speed of about 260, 280 k's an hour in about 2 seconds, because it only wants to give you the fastest frame rate, so it looks good. You'll be cornering at breakneck speeds. The cars bounce all over the place. You really wouldn't want to be susceptible to epileptic fits playing this game, because the way the cars bounce all over the screen, it's really woeful. And I don't want to, like, I'm sure the people that made the game tried really hard. They thought, well, this is going to work really well, but it just didn't. And so for a first attempt, I guess it's probably, it probably couldn't have hoped for much more. Like back then, computing power obviously was really low. Well, it wasn't anywhere close to what we have today. Like your iPhone would have 5 times more than what a computer would have 20 years ago. But the only couple of redeeming features, I guess, was when you come into the pits, it would actually cut away to a little video of one of the HSV Commodores coming into the pits. You'd see Lounsey hop out, and then Murphy pop into the car.
Only HSV. Only
HSV. It was only HRT. They were the only official car in the game. You did have other Falcons and Commodores in the game, but they were all sort of fictional teams. Like you could see the DJR team, it had like that same sort of livery, had like predominantly yellow with a bit of blue at the back, but then some just like red scribble down the side that was obviously meant to look like shell.
Yeah.
And it was like the vague resemblance of like an EBEF sort of Falcon.
So they clearly didn't have the license for.
No, so the only one they had was for HRT, and so the only drivers you had back then obviously were Lowndes, Murphy, Brocky, and I think it was Thomas Mazira that would have been partnered with him back then. So it wasn't good. And then it was so bad, in fact, that like they didn't actually even take the video footage of the circuit like during race time. So like the grandstands are empty. As you're coming out of the chase on the outside of the circuit, you still actually have that sort of orange mesh stuff that they use to
stop people.
Stop people walking onto a circuit or through a garden or wherever. The council still uses lots of it. You have that on the outside of the corner. God. You still got like the speed limit signs that are still up on the outside of the circuit. So they've just driven around at a normal time of year. Not even like try to do it at least somewhat during the race weekend to try and make it look like it's meant to be. So it wasn't good for a first attempt. It was pretty poor. I can honestly say that I did not play this game for that long, mainly because you would get a bit of a headache trying to figure out where your car is. And we will endeavour to put link some of the videos that we found on YouTube up for some of these games as well. So we will put that up there. So if you want to have a look for yourself, if you've never seen it before, have a quick gander.
You don't want to look for long.
It's, and you know it's bad. Like you know it's bad when they actually have to point your car out when it's on the grid. They've got that you're here, and then an arrow pointing down to your car, so you don't look at somebody else's car at the start. Like that's when you know that I'm sure they probably added that afterwards, because they're testing the game and they're like, oh, so which one am I? Oh, you're the blue one. Like, oh, okay. And it's not great. So if I was to give that game a score back in the day, it would have been a pretty woeful 4 out of 10. And how it holds up today, it gets about a half. It does not in no way it would hold up in any way, shape or form today, unfortunately. So yeah, next game, I've got Dick Johnson's V8 Challenge, and strangely enough, this was actually made by the same people.
Who was it made by?
It was made by Taurus Media, I think it was, or I haven't written it down, but yeah, and True Blue Productions, I think, now were responsible for the people that made the NRL game back in the early 2000s. They made a couple of NRL games for the PlayStation, so I think they were a New Zealand company. So it was, it was. But actually, this game was much better. Visually it looked great. The only thing that was missing was a lot more of the circuits. There was only the 4 circuits. Bathurst, Sandown, Queensland Raceway, and Oran Park, I think, were the 4. And I owned this game, and it was like graphics were so much better. Compared to anything on the PlayStation, like this was a PC game.
Was it like laser scanned or?
No, it was. They'd certainly made a lot more. Yeah, well, it was a normal game. Like they didn't superimpose a car onto a video
Wasn't Google
like the
Earth.
first one. So it was a lot more of a conventional game than what that first attempt was. So the cars at that time looked really good. You actually had a lot more of the licensed team. So you had the Perkins Commodores. You had obviously Dick Johnson's team were in there. You had John Bowers, Cat, Falcon. So you had probably around 8 to 10 of each manufacturer in there, and then you also had a few fictional teams too. If you didn't want to use one of those, HRT weren't a part of it because they were signed to EA Sports, who we'll get to very shortly as well. So unfortunately, if you're a HRT fan, this game wasn't for you anyway. But it wasn't bad to play. Like physics, obviously, for any PC game don't really exist too much. Like if you tap the up button, you've got full throttle. If you tap the down button, you got full brake. Left, right, you got full lock, left or right. So it wasn't that accurate in terms of its handling, but it did well. Like it was fun to play. You could set up however many laps you wanted to do. There wasn't so much a full championship. It was mainly just sort of one race at a time, and then you just go ahead and play it. The only thing that was a bit disappointing was if you had a heavy enough collision, or sometimes you have those mystery walls that would pop up on the outside of a curb or something like that, and all of a sudden your car would bounce up in the air, and if you were unfortunate enough to roll over, there was no sort of automatic reset to the circuit. That was sort of just it. You would just remain upside down for the remainder of the race. Yeah, so you'd just have no choice but to exit the race and start again. So it was a bit disappointing. In one way, you could probably say that's realistic, because if you roll the race, there's no reset. You're stuffed then. So in one way, they've actually nailed that. But for a video game, you just want it to be able to quickly flick back in middle of the circuit and off you go again. But yeah, I thought it was definitely a much better game than the touring car one that came before it. A couple more tracks wouldn't have gone astray, but at the same time, for a game that was released in 1999, computing just didn't have the same oomph that you would expect it to now, and so just a lack of space on the game and on what we'd be able to put on the computer to be able to give you more circuits or anything like that. But yeah, it was a good game. But if I back then, I would have scored it 8 out of 10 because it was a good fun game. But again, now, just for how old it is, you'd probably have to drop that down to a 3 out of 10, just because it's, again, it is, it like a lot of older games, they don't tend to age as well as we would have hoped. Thirdly on the list, I've got the EA Sports V8 Challenge game, and this was the first big attempt. This would have at making it an official V8 Supercar game. So this actually came out the same time as the V8 Supercars game on the PlayStation, but this one was exclusive to PC and made by EA Sports. Made by EA Sports, who, we all know that they've made some amazing games over time, like obviously all the Madden games. They used to make Formula 1 games back in the day as well, so you would expect them to do a good job at this game, and they did do a pretty good job. They certainly didn't have all of the teams licensed, but this is the one that HRT were licensed to. You had a few of the Ford teams in there. Obviously, no Dick Johnson Racing because they had their own game that was released a little bit earlier. And you had a couple more tracks. So you had the likes of Bathurst, Adelaide, Sandown, Queensland Raceway. There may have been a couple of others in there, but it was hard to actually find out exactly what the track lists were to some of these ones. So about the other thing that was a bit disappointing, this is one that I didn't own, this game, but in looking at some of the videos, obviously just some of the attention to detail, like when you see like Bathurst, it looks a lot more flat than what it does in real life. So, like as you're coming down to Forest Elbow, you don't sort of have that, dip as you go down into Forest Elbow. It just looks like this flat piece of road. But that, you expect that of a game that's, over 15 years old now. So, it's not too disappointing. But I guess a couple of other, little bits of attention to detail wouldn't have gone astray. I think, if anything, the only thing that it's the most disappointing about the game, again, being a PC game, you've only got to tap that left-hand arrow and the car suddenly wants to launch over an entire the entirety of the straight, and then same going back to the right. If you go to brake, it just gives you full brake. There's no feathering as you're going through a corner. And, I'm not too sure what steering wheels would have been like back in the day for PCs. I remember having an early one for my PlayStation, and it wasn't great. So I can't imagine it would have been much better for a PC
just on like
back
a
then
bungee.
either. Yeah,
that's it. Like a bungee one.
Yeah, it wouldn't have been great. So, but for the time, visually, it was definitely the best graphics that we'd seen. The cars looked a lot more legit than what we'd seen in the past with the Dick Johnson game and the touring cars one. So, for being on the PC, obviously, if you had a good enough PC back then, that was the one to buy. So, if I had played the game back then, I would have given it a pretty solid 8 out of 10 as well. But now it holds up a lot better just because it does. The graphics still looked a bit better, so I'd get a pretty solid 4. And then finally, for the time being, I've also got the Gran Turismo series. So we first seen back in 2001 in Gran Turismo 3 A Spec. We actually seen one of the Ford Tickford Racing Falcons from Glenn Seaton's car featured on the game, which was a pretty big one because it was the first real big international game. One that sells millions of copies all over the world, and one of our own V8 Supercars got to feature on the game. And I went out and bought this game because I had a PS2 at the time, and it was probably certainly wasn't one of the best race cars you could get on the game, but it was certainly one that I used a fair bit as well. But like anyone that played the early Gran Turismo games, all of the circuits are fictional, so you weren't able to thrash it around Bathurst or anything like that. So it was completely set in fictional lands overseas somewhere. But it wasn't too bad. But like any Gran Turismo game, the physics were probably the best that we'd seen. Obviously now they've just improved on those game on game, and it's become a genuine simulator now as opposed to just being a lot more arcadey is what this would be. But it was still really good. So for one that actually kind of felt like a V8 supercar to drive, it was really good. So I guess for a game that was released back then, I only had that one V8 supercar, but it was still better than nothing. So it got a 6 out of 10 for as far as supercars go back then, and I think for now it'll probably hold up as a 4 out of 5 out of 10.
So my games are starting at around about 2002. I have played the original Toka Race Driver, which was released by Codemasters. All the Toka games were released by Codemasters. Developed and published by Codemasters. I've played this one, but the original Toka Race Driver, which was called V8 Supercars Race Driver in Australia, it was really just focused on BTCC, so there wasn't really that much focus on Supercars. It's a bit difficult to actually find out without actually having a physical copy of the game how many Supercars teams were actually included in this.
There were a few, but HRT was missing because they had their contract to the
okay.
sports one. So but there wasn't a huge amount. I think it was probably only about half the teams were actually there.
Yeah, so you couldn't really exactly have like full grid races kind of thing. They were more just like a support category to the main, which was obviously the BTCC, which is fair enough considering it's that's how Toka started out, as was through that back in 1997. This game actually was a lot different to the previous game Supercars has been included in, because it had like an actual plot to the game. For this one, this is just straight off the Wikipedia. You raced as a guy called Ryan McCain, because I didn't do the actual championship on this, well, the career on this one, and so he raced as a driver named Ryan McCain, and he was trying to make a name for himself after his dad died, and he's like living in the shadow of his older brother. So kind of pretty cliche, but it received pretty good press at the time. It received around about 80% for most platforms. It received quite a bit lower on PC, obviously probably just because the physics don't really translate too well for PC, but with the controller it's probably a lot better to drive. I can't really give a rating for when it was back then, because I was only 4 when that game came out. So, what did you play this game, Shane?
Well, this was first time playing any sort of V8 game on a PlayStation. I guess on a technicality, one of the original first Need for Speed games, like Hot Pursuit, it wasn't one of the first. It was probably 3 or 4 into the series. It had a couple of Australian cars in it. It had the AU, like Series 1 AU XR8 with the old little double wing, and then you had the VT GTS Commodore. But you could also get the Mobile 1 HSV Commodore or HRT in that, which would have been the Lowndes car, like the last of the Lowndes cars, I think. And but I don't really know if it was quite physics. I think it was more or less just cosmetically made it look like. I don't think it made any difference to how the car performed on the game. And like any Need for Speed game, it's just an arcade game anyway. Yeah. But this first one, it was like, wow, here we go. We got V8 Supercars. We didn't have all the tracks. We didn't have all the cars. We didn't care too much. The storyline, like the cutaway scenes, were actually quite cool. I actually quite enjoyed them back in for a racing game. It was quite pioneering, I guess, at the time to actually have a storyline set around a racing game. Like you see it with any normal video game, see it with first-person shooters or any obviously role-playing games are the same, but for a racing game, you'd never seen it. So that I was actually quite cutting edge and quite far-fetched, I guess. If there was the story, the original movie was, you have what was his name, Ryan McCain. Him and his older brother watch this guy who becomes your rival throughout the game take out your dad after the race is finished. He goes into a wall, the car explodes, your dad dies. It was pretty obvious that the bad guy in the game killed your dad. Yeah. Pretty simply, he'd be in jail. Yeah. He wouldn't have a racing career.
He wouldn't still be racing.
No, that's it. And, no category in their right mind would let this guy continue racing. But as you go right through to the end of the game, like one of the final scenes is your mechanic, who I can't remember what they call him, but he's got an Aussie accent, so he's obviously meant to be an Australian. At least on the Australian version of the game, it might be different overseas as well. But one of the last scenes is you and your guys putting the bad guy into the back of another race car, and it gets driven away as if he's going to be now murdered himself. And I'm thinking, well, that would kind of make you guys the key suspects, because if no one is your rival, he killed your dad, and then you killed him straight after you, and now this guy's going to mysteriously go disappearing.
Jesus Christ!
I think it was quite. I thought it was quite cool, and it's what you'd expect in a Hollywood movie. But I'm thinking, well, if this was meant to feel real life, like as anyone that plays racing games, we like to try and make it feel as real as you possibly can. But well, if that's how it actually was, you got to have some questions to answer. But it was a really good game, mate. It was good. Obviously, missing a few tracks, but as we will get to, they get better as they get along.
So the next installment of V8 Supercars was V8 Supercars 2. I actually have this one physically on me right now. I only had the PC version, so I was the Hour Key boy. I got so used to driving with a keyboard that when I went to PlayStation 2 for the next game, I really struggled. It was ridiculous. But it came with a decent amount of tracks. It came with Phillip Island, Bathurst, Pukekohe, Surfers Paradise, Sandown, Adelaide, and Barbagallo. So it actually had like the main kind of circuits. Obviously, they didn't run at that many circuits back then, but it's a shame that they didn't have like. They really should have included all of them, which would have been good, considering that they're actually labeling it as a V8 Supercars 2, like you'd expect them to try and get a full grid by then. So you could only have 21 cars on the track at the same time, which obviously isn't the full grid from back then, running anywhere from like 30 to 34, depending on the race. It was based on the 2003 championship season. And it had like all the official rules and everything, so you could even race online, which was a really awesome addition to it. I couldn't when I had this game because I lived in a really tiny town and we had dial-up internet, so we couldn't race online. But the option was there, which was pretty cool for Supercars game. So you could technically have a Supercars league way back in 2004, which would have been awesome to experience. It basically stayed on stayed on the same kind of route. It was a scripted career mode. I really enjoyed this game. I played as far as I could through the career mode. I was only very young and I wasn't very good at racing games back then, so I don't think I got pretty close to finishing, but I don't think I ever finished the actual game. But I really enjoyed it. I remember getting good enough to actually be able to complete like a 10-lap race at one point, so I was pretty proud of myself for that. Back then, I'd probably give it like almost like a 9 out of 10. I really enjoyed this game. Like, it was my first proper V8 Supercars and really driving kind of experience that I actually remember on the PC. Now, I'd probably give it around like a 6.5 out of 10, just because it doesn't include all of the tracks, and that's a bit annoying, so you can't do a full championship season on there. But yeah, still a really good game anyway.
Yeah, well, I think I got to the end of the career mode, but I think once I got far enough to sort of unlock the V8s properly, I think I just spent a lot more time playing that. And then, and so I think it took a really long time to finally go, all right, I better finish the career mode. Because again, it had a bit of an unrealistic type story mode to it. I think, what was it? It was like a reality TV show. It was like a documentary based on the young rookie driver or something like that. I can just remember it was this, meant to be the hot girl with the video camera following you around everywhere. I can remember vague bits of that, but it was a really cool game though, and it was for me, I was really happy because it featured Marcus Ambrose championship BA Falcon, and so I was pretty happy with that. And then it featured more of the teams, more of the drivers. Again, still no HRT as they were contracted to EA, but having more tracks of the championship to race that too, it felt like it was getting closer to a proper V8 supercar game. Like I think a lot of us fell in the first one. A lot of us fell for it, where we thought it was a genuine V8s game, not just we've taken an overseas game and they've just sort of thrown them a bit of coin and said, here's the licensing, put our cars in the game, and we'll and then go from there. So it was we didn't feel like we were just like an add-on to a game. It actually felt like it was made for us a bit more, which was good.
So moving on to V8 Supercars 3, which is probably close to one of my favorite racing games of all time. Unfortunately, my PC disc for this game is actually broken, but I have it on PlayStation 2 as well, so I can still play it. But it was just a continuation, basically, of Supercars 2, but heaps better. The graphics were the graphics system was updated quite a bit. It looked a lot cleaner, and I also remember it just handling a lot better than the Supercars 2 game. It was a lot more predictable. You could also there was also a lot more in-depth tuning for this one. You could actually tune it down to the millimeter kind of thing, rather than just being able to just go less aero, more aero kind of thing. It was actually giving you the angles and all that, which was so cool for me back then. So it really taught me how different setups change different characteristics of the cars, and it even gave you explanations for how different parts of the car affect the handling. And if you screwed up the setup, you just go off on the first corner, simple as that. So it really did have an effect on you. And I even remember there was a really cool telemetry section where it would show you how your car is handling through different parts of the circuit, and you could slow it right down, so it was like a replay, and you could see where your car was on the circuit and how much you're applying your brake. So you could even see if you could brake later into certain corners, or if you could be accelerating harder, if you're accelerating too early out of the corners. So it was really, really super in depth, and it was great. Obviously, it had a lot more of the championship cars from 2005. The liveries looked awesome back then, so I think that really complemented the upgraded graphics. Had online as well, which was really cool. I'd moved to Townsville at that point, so I could have played online, but I don't think I could, because of the PC that I was using. It wasn't capable, couldn't keep up with that kind of demands. So unfortunately, I never actually played it online. But yeah, really, really good game. I played through. You could set up a full season for that one. I don't know whether it actually had every single track, but you could select full season, and you could play through an entire season of the Supercars Championship. I think I did that about 10 times. I think I even completed a full Bathurst 1000 on that. It only takes you 4 hours to do that on that game, though, so it's a lot faster racing around it on the game than in real life.
Definitely a lack of safety cars probably helps with that as well.
But you can also do 1 minute 45s around there. I played it the other day, and you could do 1 minute 45, so it's not very accurate.
No, well, I remember in that one there was you could change it from more arcade steering to, I think it was like the simulation, they probably called it. And it actually did vastly change the characteristics of the car to the point where it was actually a lot more I think I was probably around that mid 140s back in the day playing it. But if you put it on the simulation style, I think it was actually a lot closer to that low 2 minute mark, because you had to really try and slow it down for the corners. So there was sort of the arcade one. I know on the PC you couldn't really have it on simulation because it was just out of control. Then it didn't want to turn. But on the PlayStation, we could actually have a bit of finesse with the little sticks like the DualShock controller. You added that little bit of finesse with the accelerator and the braking and the steering, so it made it a little bit better for that.
I must have had it on arcade then in order to do 145s.
I think if you still hooked it up, you could still do probably sub 2 minutes, but I think I was probably around that sort of 2 minute 5 mark, and that was only a couple of years after Greg Murphy got that lap of the gods at 202.
Yeah, exactly.
Was it 206 or I think it was?
206.
So you were sort of just doing around those times anyway, so it felt a lot closer to the mark. And then, but out of the three, it was definitely the best one. I think for the Holden fans, having HRT was probably a big thing. Obviously their contract with EA Sports was now over, And it featured every circuit, including they went to China that year. So
Yeah,
it
they
had
went
the
to
Chinese
Shanghai.
circuit. So yeah, it was but with that circuit compared to, because it would have been done, like it was only like the second major event ever held at that circuit. They were at, the Formula One was there late the year before, and then F1 Supercars was there fairly early, I think, in the season. It was probably only about 4 or 5 rounds in, I think, that Supercars were there. So I think they said it was, at the time, the after F1 was the next biggest thing that was at that circuit. So racing games hadn't even really had a chance to visit the that circuit yet. But even compared to what F1 games were at the time, which you had the likes of F1 04, 05, 06, it was probably not the greatest copy of China, compared to what the F1 games were doing. It where the other tracks actually looked a lot more real. I felt a lot more real. China didn't. Plus, they used the full GP circuit, not the short circuit. Yeah. But they wouldn't have even known when that came out what they were using. But I do remember one other bit with Bathurst though in that game was I think it was you coming up towards McPhillamy. I think that it was just a bit of a rise that you could go over, and I think you had to have it on the arcade one, but it probably still happened on simulation too, where you'd actually get air.
Oh yeah.
It was so you actually sort of had to slow down if you wanted to keep the car on the track, and admittedly, you're probably going a lot faster in the game than what they were in real life anyway. So you probably had to slow it down a little bit anyways. But I always thought that, to get 1.5 tons of car airborne like a rally car like that, I thought, well, no one's going to get a V8 Supercar airborne just over the rise in the circuit like that. Yeah. So I thought, as awesome as they've made this game, they've let themselves down by just allowing the car to jump like that. When in the previous game, when Bathurst was there, it didn't do that. So I thought, well, they've kind of allowed it to go backwards, and they dropped the storyline in this game too, which was they probably had to, because there was a lot more in the game as well. It was a lot more of a larger game, and it was out of the three, it was easily the best.
I do remember though that the Bathurst that was on V8 Supercars 2 was a lot better than the V8 Supercars 3. The one in Supercars 2 was a lot steeper, and I feel as if it was a lot more accurate as well. Because Bathurst is one of the first circuits that you go to go have a go at. I just remember loading it up and go, oh, this Bathurst is a lot flatter. And it wasn't until a few years down the track, and when I was actually able to go to Bathurst, I was thinking of, wonder which Bathurst is more realistic, when I actually went to Bathurst a few years ago. And I'm like, okay, yeah, Supercars 2 is a lot more accurate.
And yeah, definitely the steep one. V8 Supercars 3 looks like it on when you watch it on TV when it's not as flat, but or not as steep in some parts. When anyone that's had the chance to drive around the circuit at any normal time of year, some places are extremely steep.
Just make it as steep as possible.
So I can't really remember year on year how much Bathurst changed for the games, but I do sort of remember that in number 2, Bathurst felt like I preferred racing at Bathurst than number 2 more than what I did in number 3, because one, the jumping car issue was always something that stopped me from wanting to race there. But strangely, Adelaide, I think, was always my go-to track in number 3. It was good to thrash the cars around there.
I also went to Hidden Valley a lot, because that was the first time. I think this is also why I like Supercars 3 so much, because that was the first time I could ever go to a circuit that I'd actually been to and actually race a car around it, because I only went to Hidden Valley back then, and I was so excited by that. It was so cool. But moving on to my rating, I'd probably give this a 9.5 out of 10. It's probably just only the Bathurst that brings it down, which is a shame, because it's the biggest circuit, obviously. And now I'd probably still give it about an 8, honestly, because I'd still pick this up and play it if my PC disc wasn't broken, which is a shame. but yeah, it's still such a great game, and it's great to play through, despite the fact that you can go so much faster
Yeah,
in the
well,
game.
exactly. Like, and I actually, like, long after I stopped playing the PS2, I picked up the V8 Supercars 3 on PC for like $10 or $15 at EB Games or something like that. I've seen it there in the pile. It may not have been there. It may have been somewhere else. But I'm like, $15, bang, straight on the laptop. And
Yeah,
but then you remember like how hard these games are to play.
yeah.
Especially like the Formula Ford games.
Oh
Formula Ford.
yeah,
Like you only had to just touch another wheel, and you just like
flying.
pinballed, and it was like but he couldn't. If you just again you tap that left arrow, it would like it would either move very tiny amount, so you have to like hold it down for a split second, but then it would like want to throw you off the circuit. You had to really get it nailed in there, and the Formula One car, because it had like Mark Webber's 2005 Williams as part of the game as well, and it was very hard to use. Even on like on the PlayStation, I remember that compared to F1 games, the physics were just way off.
Yeah.
You'd expect an F1 game to try and feel close to what the real thing does. And I'm sure even if I went back and played F1 2005, it would feel like the worst compared to what we have now. But I just remember, V8 Supercars 3, the Williams F1 car, and that just did not feel anywhere close to what an F1 car should.
Yeah. So there was in 2006 they released Race Driver 2006. But it was actually just an expanded edition of V8 Supercars 2 for the PlayStation Portable. So they didn't make this was after V8 Supercars 3, but they made a expanded version of V8 Supercars 2 for the PlayStation Portable, which doesn't make much sense. That's all it says here. That's all that there is information-wise about that one. So I never played that one. I assume it's not that popular of a game.
I don't know anyone that bought a PSP.
Yeah.
I don't think they would have sold too many of those in Australia.
And then moving on to a portable game that I actually have played, which is V8 Supercars Create and Race, which was just an adaptation of V8 Supercars 3. But it had this really cool mode, which was called Create and Race, where you could create your own circuit and then race on it. And you could make your own championship with all your created circuits, which was so cool. But for some reason, you could only race in these around these created circuits with one championship, which was the Autosport Championship, which was just these little Renault Clios, and you could only race with those. So you could make your own tracks, but you could only race with those, which was very strange. But I just thought, I thought it was so cool that you were able to make your own circuits and race around them. But then also the fact that you were able to have, like, V8 Supercars but portable. So I went on quite a few trips back then, and I just thought it was great to be able to race that. And I would play that game so much, it was ridiculous. I had it on PlayStation 2, and then I would have it on my DS. So like I was set for life. It was great.
Yeah. I didn't even know that was a thing, that one.
Yeah, I don't think many people do, but I think I saw it in like a Big W or something. Like just happened to see it out the corner of my eye, and I'm like to my mum, I need that game. I didn't even know it existed before, but I'm like, I need that.
Yeah, that's it.
I think it was on sale for like $25 or $20 or something. It's just like, yeah, whatever. And we're out on holiday, so she's like, it'll keep him quiet for a while.
This will shut him up.
Yeah, that's it. That one even had you're even able to exchange tracks. So if you went online, which I couldn't, you were able to exchange tracks with other people. So that was really cool. But then also you were able to play that. You're able to connect to other DSs, and you could play with those people, even if those people didn't have the game, which no one did. So they were able to even race with me if they didn't have the game. So that was really cool as well. Then,
it's sort of something that you should see on more games.
Yeah, exactly. Back then, I would have given that probably 8 out of 10. I didn't have the full championship. And even back then, the graphics were pretty poor for like a DS game. But I booted it up when we started talking about old games, and I'm like, holy crap, this is really bad.
It's aged very poorly.
It's you can only tell whose car is who by the little name tags above the cars. It's that bad. Because obviously the DS screen isn't the biggest, but like
No.
we had Mario Kart back then, and Mario Kart still looks smick now.
Yeah.
And that game just looks it looks terrible. They just look like little bugs like going around the screen. That's what it looks like.
Wow.
And the
Well,
collisions are so bad as well.
Yeah. I remember I had an old Game Boy Advance back in the day. I think I would have got that in about 2001, 2002. There was no V8 games on that, but there was one racing game that I had that wasn't that great. But then I did see that there was F1 2002 on there, and wow, it was just the worst. It was just a few pixels, and that's your red Ferrari, and then a few like grey pixels, and that's your McLaren.
Yeah.
And it's like, wow, that they really thought that this was a good thing, and it was still EA Sports F1 2002.
Yeah.
But that's all they could do. And like anyone who's ever played a Game Boy Advance, it's not backlit. So there's no like you're trying to just get the right angle so you can just sort of make out what you're doing, and you couldn't have the light on anywhere near, because if you just get the reflection off the light, it was for a game that had somewhat handheld console that had somewhat good graphics at the time. There's so many things that they got wrong. But those things happen.
For back then, I would have given that an 8 out of 10, just because it was there. Like I just thought it was great that it was portable and all that.
Yeah.
But now I'd give it like a 3, I reckon.
Yeah.
or more or less, because it was just I'd have to play it again to really give it a good rating, but it's a few weeks ago now. But yeah, it's only like a 3 out of 10, just because the handling is just almost close to unplayable, really. It's because it's like worse than like what the keypad was on the computers, because you would A to accelerate, B to brake, but you had to brake for so long, because for some reason, even with all the assists off, once you lifted off the accelerator, it continued accelerating.
Yeah.
So you have to hold the brake for a really long time into any corners, and it just meant all the AI would dive bomb you into that corner. So it was, and then you just go flying past them again on the straight, because for some reason your straight line ability was like 1,000 times as anyone else's, because even though you're in like the same car, didn't make any sense.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Well, it's like even that going back way back to that first game that I was talking about. I never even went close to winning a race. Like at best, I finished last by half a lap. Like because it's just so hard to drive the game.
Yeah.
Like it just misbehaved in every single way. That even watching the videos of this game now, all they do is go backwards as well. Like they all pretty much finish last. Like they might pass a few cars, but then shortly after they get past. And like you're going top speed up mountain straight, and they'll just walk past you.
Yeah.
And then you got to try and catch up during the corners. It's just terrible.
Oh my god. So moving on to the Forza Motorsport games, we'll just touch on these ones just because they aren't. It was just that they included the V8 Supercars. So the games that did include them were Motorsport 3, 4, and 5. I've played both 3 and 4 on the Xbox 360. Great games. I think it was probably one of the better handling models that the Supercars had up till then. They did have... It didn't feel arcadey, because, well, at the time I hadn't really experienced a sim racing game, but, like... They were certainly one of the most difficult cars to handle, which they should be, because they are a very difficult car to handle. They had more Fords in that game than they did Holdens for Forza Motorsport 3, so how controversial is that? They had Jamie Whincup, Oh no, sorry, it was the equal amount. I'm reading it wrong. Sorry, there was an equal amount of Falcons and Commodores. So yeah, Jamie Winkup, Team Vodafone, 25 Brightech Motorsport, which was Jason Bright. And then Mark Winterbottom for the number 5, and then Shane Van Gisbergen in the number 9 for the Fords. Then they had Garth Tander, number 2, Gary Rogers Motorsport, number 33. I'm trying to remember who that was back then. Then Russell Ingles, number 39, Super Cheap Auto, and Greg Murphy's number 51. And it was cool because you could customize those cars. You didn't have to keep them as like the actual liveries that they came with, so you could like design your own supercar, which I thought was the coolest thing. And they weren't like super expensive cars to buy in the game, so I think from memory they were like 900,000 credits, which wasn't much for Forza. Like, it sounds like a lot, but it wasn't really much for the in-game credits, so you could get them like as your first kind of like race car. And that's the car that I upgraded, and then I just dominated everything with it because I loved racing it. They did a similar kind of thing for Forza Motorsport 4. They had Alex Davison. Just trying to find all of them. Where did they all go? They have them out of order here. Really usefully, but
they definitely had the bigger teams and drivers.
Yeah,
from each manufacturer.
Yeah. That's not necessarily. They had Jonathan Webb for one of them, which I wouldn't say is the big team.
No, that's probably true.
And then they obviously had the 5 then they had the Commodores as well, for that. But yeah, it's good that at least they got included in a big name game kind of thing, because I don't think they back then, it was like 2000 and back for Forza Motorsport 3, it was only like 2011, and they weren't really getting that much recognition as like a really good motorsport. So I think a lot of people began to realize how awesome V8 Supercars was, and I think that's how a few international viewers were brought in, especially for the younger generation that didn't know about them, who were playing Forza. Just to quickly mention, the Supercars were also included in Forza Horizon 3 because it was based in Australia, so it would be blasphemy to not include V8 Supercars. So Chaz Mostert's Falcon and then James Courtney's Commodore were both included. For some reason, the numbers on James Courtney's car looks a little bit strange. That's the only thing.
The Marcus Ambrose FGX was also a part of Horizon 3. It was
okay.
It was, yeah. I think you had to do a couple of the Forzathon challenges to unlock that one. So I don't think I ever got the super cheap car. I think I only ever got the Ambrose car in that, but it's only because a mate of mine messaged me and says, "Oh man, all you have to do is this to get the Ambrose car."
Oh yeah, that's the Xbox one, isn't it?
The simplest task. It was like almost as bad as just like doing a race or something like that. And so it was 5 minutes, and then I finally had my V8 Supercar, which was
good.
Awesome. So I think I like Forza 4. Like that's what actually got me across to Xbox, because my PlayStation had decided it didn't want to work for the second time in about 12 months, and I was like, oh, do I just go buy a new PS3, because I sent it back, and a mate of mine said, and I played Forza 4 that a mate of mine had, and he was like, oh man, just get Forza, we can, they've got the V8 Supercars on here, I'll just get that, because it had become fairly evident that there was not going to be another new V8 Supercars game on from Codemasters, and Gran Turismo 5, I think it would have been, was a bit of a letdown for me, and it did still feature, I think, the AU Glen Seaton Falcon, but it was obviously well and truly past its use-by date as far as anything modern, and so I thought, all right, what the hell, I'll get an Xbox. So I went across to that, and I haven't looked back. I've still got the Xbox now, or Xbox One now, and then but yeah, that was a great game. Number 4. It was probably actually still the best out of the series, really, because I think it was the most user friendly. Even though graphics obviously improve as they get along and physics improve, and but I think as far as just how fun the game was, I think it was definitely the best out of them. But yeah, certainly Horizon 3 was the one that Aussies were looking out for more than any other game, because it was actually a proper game featured in Australia, or down or geographically, people be more muddled up by how they think Australia looks now more than ever. Because, to go from the Gold Coast along the Great Ocean Road down to Byron Bay, that does not compute. So
yeah. Also, no Bathurst. That's the most
no,
frustrating part about that.
I'd always said to a mate of mine, so the same mate who convinced me to go across to Xbox, I said, look, you just think that they could have made Bathurst a part of the map, of just somewhere where you can go and test and tune your cars,
So
do
stupid.
laps around there, see what it's like, to have your stock standard whatever, and then do it up and then go laps around there, see how much
They could
faster
have
it is.
almost dropped their Bathurst from Forza Motorsport and then just dropped that straight into Horizon, and we would have been happy with that.
Yeah, I wouldn't have cared if it was a DLC that cost me an extra $10.
Yeah, I would have paid
it.
it. I would have rathered that over the Hot Wheels or the Snow thing. I would have 100% paid more for Bathurst than I would for those DLCs.
You wouldn't associate Australia with too much snow, except for maybe in the last week if you're living out, up in the mountains in New South Wales. It's fairly late in the year for them to be getting such big blizzards. But I didn't mind the Blizzard Mountain one, but that Hot Wheels one was just ordinary. I
never bought it.
Killed the game. Yeah, I'd prepaid it. Because it was discounted if you got the whole lot in one hit. So I'm like, all right, I'll do that because I'll get the car packs and I'll get the two, the Blizzard Mountain, and whenever the next one comes out, that'll arrive. And then it was the Hot Wheels one, and I thought, well, what? This is still kind of meant to be realistic, and you're throwing, for 5-year-olds would have loved it, but me, I'm like, no, I think I played that for a few hours, and then I'm like, oh yeah, I'm bored with that, and then I've done it. I hardly played the game after that. It almost killed the game off for me in the end.
Just moving away from Forza now, it's disappointing that Codemasters never really did continue their making of the V8 Supercars Championship games, but obviously they know what they're doing more than any of us really with the market and all that. So clearly there wasn't really the market for it anymore. But they did continue on with the Toka series after V8 Supercars. It turned into Grid 2 and then Grid Autosport and then Grid, which has now been released this year. Do you think there'll ever be another Supercars game, or do you think we're just going to be continued as add-ons?
I would love to hope so. I think it would. Yeah, it wouldn't be anytime soon. I think they would need to. But at the same time, we've got some. It's quite a few decent video game makers in Australia now that work with much bigger overseas organisations, and much bigger developers. So it wouldn't be out of the realms of possibility. But I think it would have to be a bit of an add-on to another game. It wouldn't just be solely V8 Supercars. It'd have to probably be included into something else, perhaps. But because that's obviously where they got with those first 3 V8 Supercar games. Was that they were part of the Toka series, so it was just an extra bit. And then we see now with Forza, it even took a couple of Forza games to get Bathurst included. So, we had V8 Supercars, but no Australian circuits to race them on. And even now, we still only have one, and that's Bathurst. So you sort of get, sick and tired of racing around Bathurst. So
not a very good Bathurst anyway.
Yeah, well, it certainly probably looks as good as it has throughout any previous games. Strangely enough, the first one is probably the most realistic because they actually used video footage of going around the circuit. But apart from that, I think certain bits, even with Forza, what are we up to now? 7. There's still a couple of bits of the circuit where you're like, oh, it's right, but it still doesn't quite feel right. But I just wish they'd put a couple more circuits on, even a Phillip Island or an Eastern Creek, or even if it was a fictional street circuit around Sydney or something like that. Just
go across the Harbour Bridge or something.
Yeah, you see it in every video or every motorsport game, every racing game. That it's not all real circuits. They still insist on putting the fictional circuits in. Yeah. So, some get some are more realistic than others. Yeah, but why can't they put a fictional one in for Sydney or Melbourne or something like that? So, yeah. But as far as an actual V8 Supercar game goes, it's hard to say. I'd love to see it, but it would probably have to be one that they do that has that plan to be out for 3 or 4 years. Like, it couldn't be a year-on-year one. Yeah, maybe like a DLC to maybe a DLC to update the drivers and the liveries, and you'd probably, if you had a career mode where you could start in like the Toyota 86 series or something like that.
Yeah.
Work your way up into Super 3, then Super 2, then into Supercars. Throw the Utes in there. They could still throw the whole lot in there.
Yeah.
And it could be quite a good game where you'd be able to play it for quite a long time. But
I think
it would just be the overall audience that would be purchasing the game.
I think if they release like a base game, like a Supercars game, it wouldn't take very long for the masterminds that modify games to be able to release updated liveries for the cars and release updated drivers for the cars. It'd be as simple as downloading a zip file and putting it in the game. Like we see it with F1 already. There's supposed to be locked files, but there's plenty. Well, previous games were all supposed to be locked files, but I've modified one of my games so far that's replicating the 2005 championship season. So there's no limits to what they could do once a base game is released. I think we've kind of seen that with Assetto Corsa, but Assetto Corsa, obviously, if it's, you can go as far as to modify cars and like car mods for games and livery mods and all that. Pretty easy, but when it becomes difficult is when you're trying to load whole tracks into games, modified tracks into games. I've experienced this where you'll be racing the AI, and the AI are just terrible around the circuit because it's a mod track, whereas if you go to an official circuit that's part of the game, they're way better. It's just inconsistent, and then some mod tracks, they're really good, so you have to change the difficulty. So I think, I'd love to see a game, official Supercars game, probably released by Codemasters. I probably trust them the most in order to do that. I'd pay upwards of like $110 pre-release for something like that, honestly. Yeah. I don't think many people would, but I 100% would. Well, I'd play it constantly.
Even if they went to the people that made Forza, like they've already at least got Bathurst that they've had for a couple of games, but they've got what the most recent V8 Supercars are like, so they sort of know the physics of it on that side of things. So they've already got a kind of a head start. All they got to do is model the new ZB Commodore and the new Mustang, and for at least now the Altima. But then they just got to go around to the other circuits. So it probably, like Codemasters would, between them or the people that make Forza, as a Turn 10 studios, I know they do 10. Horizon, so they would probably be the first two that you'd call upon. But I think they'd need to work with an Aussie developer to at least get a lot of the work head started over here first. But it would it'd be optimistic to think that there'll be one out anytime soon. I know that there was a Facebook page that was getting a little bit of traffic a while ago, but when I stumbled across it again not that long ago, that nothing's been there, but it was a group that was put together to try and convince Supercars to make another game. And I thought, they're trying, so we're not the only ones standing up for it, but I think they'll be optimistic to think it would happen anytime soon.
I remember seeing mock covers of it, and I think someone posted it as like an April Fool's prank at one point, saying, "Oh yeah, we're gonna get a new Supercars game," and I was really excited. I'm like, "Oh wait, no, this is just a mock cover. Never mind."
So I think that might be where we're at. Is they might just tack themselves onto Forza games for now, but they might be able to convince them to add a few extra cars, and even some of the historic cars, like get some of the old
Tavana or whatever.
We had some of those in Horizons, but I'm thinking some of like the VS Commodore, like the old HRT, like Lowndes' first championship car, or the old Mark Larkin Mitre 10 EF Falcon or something like that would be just something different. Just throw a couple of those old ones, and you've only got to add the car there. and people will make up all the liveries anyway. I know
Yeah.
I spend as much time making up liveries for the cars that I buy for those games than I do actually racing them. So
Yeah.
it's I've come up with quite a few that I've quite like over time. So
Mm.
yeah, I do have one more game though
Oh yeah.
that does feature the supercars, and it's as far as I know, the only one that is on a handheld, like is on iOS or Android, so any smartphone, and that's Real Racing 3. So it was a game that was first released, I think, back in about 2013. It took them a little while to get V8 Supercars on there. It's a little bit like Gran Turismo or Forza, where you've got multiple series. Originally, it was mostly just standard road cars. So you start off with a Ford Focus, and then you had your Silvias and your Skylines and that sort of thing. And then they started to add more and more official series into the game, but you're very restricted to what you can do within it. So you can't choose, make up your own championship. You can't really choose the length of the race. It'll always dictate to you how long the races are. So that's a bit disappointing in that way. Like if you just had if you just set up your own quick race and do what series you want or what car you wanted around what circuit and however many laps, that would probably make it a little bit better. But they added V8 Supercars into it back in 2016. So the main feature car was Chaz Mostert's FGX Falcon, but you also had the Craig Lowndes Caltex Commodore. So probably one of the better looking liveries going around back in the back a couple of years ago. And you also had the Nissan Altima in there as well. So I think that one actually arrived first. It was the first of a series of challenges you had to complete to unlock the car and keep it. And I think the Altima actually was it arrived before the Falcon or the Commodore. But
Wow.
I know it was on the lead up to Bathurst in 2016. It was the first sort of proper supercars challenge. So you had to complete a whole series of challenges, and you had to choose your side. So it was all meant to be that Ford versus Holden rivalry, and obviously I chose the Ford side. So I had to do all of the various challenges, which got harder, and you had to obviously like any freemium game where you've got to they want you to try and spend your real money to buy fake in-game money to make your car better, but I just refused to do that on principle. So
Yeah.
I just slowly chip away at it, and I managed to unlock this car, and I was never going to be able to unlock the Commodore. I would have happily done it just to complete its little championship that it unlocked after that, but I just thought, no, I've spent enough of my accumulated gold, so I just had to leave it there. So I got that. Then they did another one for the 2017 championship, which was obviously set a little bit more around Scott McLaughlin's car. Was one of the more featured cars in that. He still also had the Tickford cars. You had in both you had the HSV team. So you had James Courtney was in there. You had the Nissan drivers. You had all the Nissan drivers except for Rick Kelly, strangely enough. So he's the only one that doesn't feature. So you've got Simona, you've got Caruso, and you've got Todd Kelly in the older one, but you don't have Rick Kelly, which is a strange one, because if they've had to go to them to say, hey, can we use your car for this game, but hey, we don't want one of the guys that owns the team. We just want the other people in that drive for you. So that one seems strange. Yeah.
Maybe he thought he didn't look good, so he didn't want to be on there.
Maybe. So it was but then you got some of the Brad Jones cars in there. You got the GRM cars there. So you got quite a few to select from if you've unlocked them. But again, it's hard to unlock it unless you really want to spend that much real money on it. Going on a couple of other cars, I remember there was one Ferrari in the game, and if I wanted to unlock that, the amount of gold it would cost me, if I didn't have any of the in-game gold to buy the car, it would have cost me about $110 to buy this car. And I'm like, are you serious? You can buy Forza, a brand new Forza game where it's all there, ready to go, plus some of the DLCs for less money than what just one car. And I'm like, but that's the art of the freemium game, is they try and suck you into spending money. And how great would this car be? And no, I don't care. I refuse to do it on principle. But
that's ridiculous.
It is good though. It's it's still quite arcadey. It's an iPhone game, so you're tilting the thing to steer. and but to complete enough challenges in the one series that I only just finished off recently, you had to do up the car, which I ended up wiping out most of my gold that I had slowly accumulated over time. But so much so that it's considerably faster than the real thing around the circuit. So you're doing sort of 1 minute 41 laps around Bathurst. The fastest times just in there was I think about 1:37 that some people are doing in the time trial event for it. So I'm like, I don't know what they're doing because they're still 4 seconds a lap faster than me, and I am maxed out. So, but I'm thinking you're obviously, it's quite unrealistic in terms of how fast you can drive around the circuit. There are a couple of Australian circuits in the game, though, because it is actually an Australian-developed game. So it's you have Bathurst, of course, but it actually feels a little bit wider than the real thing. So you just feel like you can just carry so much more speed. So even one of my early cars, like a Focus ST, I'm putting that car around the circuit in 2 minutes 6 seconds as well. So I'm on lap of the gods pace in a mildly worked Focus. So it's just. There are a few elements that aren't quite realistic, but then there is Melbourne Street Circuit, but it's not Albert Park.
That's interesting.
It's actually set around Flinders Street Station, so but they actually use real streets. Like if you download the game and play it, and you drive around that circuit, and then jump on Google Earth, you will be able to map out that same circuit.
Wow.
So they have actually modelled it off real streets. So. I guess
that's
credit
cool.
Where it's due there. So, kind of what you want to see in video games that use, if it's a fictional street circuit in a real city, you want them to use the real, the real streets, not just, these massive highways flying through a city that you think, well, that doesn't really belong there. But so I thought that was, a clever touch. And like I said, it's mostly an Australian developed game. So obviously, their studios might be just outside where the circuit that they've made, and they thought, oh, let's do it here, and they've sent someone around for a drive and thought that looks good. So, but that's all I've got. They're the apart from the likes of iRacing, where it's a subscription racing game where you've got the FG Falcon in there and the VF Commodore. You often, when you watch the online racing, I was actually only watching a race last night where you had Anton De Pasquale, Scott McLaughlin. You had quite a few of the younger up-and-comer drivers that were part of it too.
Tuesday night special.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, so I was going to do that.
I sat up and I watched it. It had already been running one, and then I started watching it, fell asleep because I was tired, and finished off watching it today. And fair to say that the drivers that you expected to finish up the pointy end did not.
Yeah.
But it was still quite entertaining, and good to see that even though they're racing in supercars, they're still happy to have a bit of fun doing this. So we see in Formula One, you had was it Lando Norris and Max Verstappen won a 24-hour sim race. I don't know how much prize money they won for it. Probably not as much as that kid that won that $3 million for playing Fortnite. I'm jealous of that kid. I've never been good enough at any particular game to warrant me winning $3 million for it. But that's just a little bit of a snapshot of some of the games that our humble V8 Supercars have been a part of.
There's plenty of more where they've just randomly appeared, but obviously way too many to mention. Although I would mention Project Cars, both the original one and number 2. They only have the 2012 V8 Supercar in there. Both, it's the same model for both of the original one and number 2. But they do have a really, really good render of Bathurst. I'd say it's probably one of the best ever. I've raced, I think I have a stupid amount of laps turned around that Bathurst because it's my main test track that I go to. But it's very, very accurate. I'd say it's probably the best one ever, which is unusual because it's very not Australian based or Australian focused. It's really European / North America kind of based. So very strange. But they also do have a New Zealand circuit, which isn't Pukekohe there. So Yeah, very, very weird circuit choice, but yeah, very accurate, and their laser scans are really, really
Yeah,
good circuits.
and
So
that's what you, if you're playing a genuine sim, I think that's the big difference. If they can laser scan a circuit, and that bump that's on the circuit, you can actually feel it in the game. That makes a big difference, and that's why the likes of Forza, how we would once have considered that to be a pretty fair simulator, really drifts back into the realms of an arcade game. Now it's still well and truly on the simulator end of arcade games, but it's not as genuine feeling. And like if I had a good enough PC at home to be able to subscribe to iRacing or go out and get a Zeta Corsa or one of these games, then I'll happily be doing that tomorrow. But unfortunately don't have the computer to be able to do that. But when you see some of these sim races and how good they are, there was that one that started off with, I think might have been Gran Turismo 5. How it if you're connected to the internet, you could do the challenges to be able to go and race in the Le Mans series, and I think it was for Nissan. And that became a reality TV show for a couple of years of trying to get sim racers to be able to become a real race car driver.
Yeah,
I don't think they've made too much of themselves beyond that category. I can't even remember who won it, but I don't think they've gone on to become the most amazing of race car drivers. But then you see someone like Max Verstappen, and he, the last few years he's spent more time doing sim racing than anything else in the lead up to F1, and that's why he was he nearly got to race F1 when he was 16, ended up being 17.
Yeah,
and he's he's one of the best drivers going around at the moment. And that's because he learned on video games as opposed to racing in the junior category. So it's quite amazing when you think about how that's how realistic they've become now. If you can get a proper simulator, it's pretty spot on how close it is.
So that just about wraps us up for today. Thank you very much for joining me, Shane.
No worries, mate. We'll look forward to the bend in a couple of weeks.
We will do. Thank you all very much for listening. We hope you enjoyed. We'll see you next time.